Hi everyone, Savannah Tree Foundation Field Manager Jake Henry here, and today we're out at the Whitemarsh Preserve. We're doing a little site visit. We spend a lot of time in urban environments focused on these, really tough places, these tree lawns, parking lots, but it's important to think about these preserves as well. They are certainly an important part of our urban forest, and I just wanted to walk through today and talk about some of the things that I find out here. It's really fascinating. If you're a taxonomy geek like me, come out here and challenge yourself. There's a lot of tree species that you don't normally find in our urban areas. Now, just before we get walking, I wanted to point out one thing that's really important about forests that you don't see in a lot of urban environments, and that's the different levels of stories in a forest. So I mean overstory, which are the really big trees like this big beautiful magnolia we have here. Mid-story, which are trees that are in the middle, hence the name. So we've got some nice water oaks over here. And then we have understory. So the understory typically encompasses lots of new growth that's coming up below. So we've got some pines here, some other oak species, some water oaks. I think there's some Tupelos back there. So there's all these different levels, and it's really hard to maintain that in an urban environment. It can be messy, it can be a hazard, it can be a safety concern, but there's really so many benefits to having all those levels in an actual forest. So that's just the first thing I wanted to point out. It's really great to see that out here in a natural area. And as I mentioned, this gigantic southern magnolia right here is just incredible. And I found some other fun species out here. There are some that you would expect to find in a forested area here in the southeast. We've got our pine trees, we've got our water oaks, we've got some live oaks. Here's a Tupelo, or black gum, one of my favorite native species. We plant a lot of these and they look pretty small. These can actually get to be pretty big trees. So this is a good example of one that is well on its way. It's maybe 10 inches across there. Really nice tree. We've got a nice big red oak over there. And if we can find a little entrance into the forest, we'll actually go in a bit. You can see some pine species here. So one of the cool things that you can find in places like this is wherever you see a tree growing can actually reveal some hints about the species itself. So a good example is pine trees. Many of them are what we call shade intolerant. They really don't like growing in the shade. Now, you might say, well, this one's kind of growing in the shade, but it actually has quite a bit of sunlight. If we look up, it's got some nice openings there above this trail. So we actually have some pine regeneration here happening, but you don't really see much further into the forest. They really just don't like shade. They're very unhappy when they're completely shaded. And so as the forest ages, you'll actually see less and less pine species because they can't handle that dense shaded canopy. They're what we like to call early successional species. So you find them early on when a forest is growing. And the late successional species are things that really don't mind shade. So like red maples are a great example. They can just hang out in the shade all day long. Water oaks are another good example. That's another one of those where we like to emphasize right tree, right place. Not the best tree as a street tree, but it's certainly an important part of our native ecosystems. So we don't mind it here. Another one that's kind of in that wheelhouse is our sweet gum here. A controversial native because of its spiky little gumballs, but I think another fantastic native species. They're really wonderful fall color if you don't mind the little spikiness. You can see some mature pines here stretching up there. Like I said, those will start to age out over time if this forest is left to develop and start growing more shade tolerant species. You'll see less and less of those pines as it goes on. It's really just a beautiful space out here. You don't often get the opportunity to see a nice dense ecosystem like this. Oh, see, here we go. We got lots of sun here out in this open area, and we've got lots of little pines over there. We've got one there. We've got a whole cluster there. So they need that full sun. So they'll be happy here, but you won't find them further back into the forest, at least not as many. It's so important to have these larger forested spaces, when we talk about stormwater management and stormwater runoff and sequestration, having these large areas for water to sit and be absorbed by the forest are so important. It's really hard for a tree to take up lots of water when it only has a small little, 3 foot by 3 foot tree well. But having all of this space is really fantastic for trees to be able to take up water. Oh, here we go. Here's another Tupelo here, and they can have pretty nice form. They can grow really straight, really nice kind of light bark, really pretty tree species. And again, great for pollinators. Bees love them. That's where Tupelo honey comes from, actually. They don't mind a little bit of water too, so they can deal with wetter areas if you've got a good spot for one of those. And you'll see here, a lot of these pines are pretty big. So as I said, they're an early successional species. They like to be here when there's nothing else, so they can take up all that sun and grow fast. So these are pretty large trees. These are some of the largest trees that I've seen out here, in terms of what species is biggest. There's a nice big one back there. Well, we'll take a look at that one. It's really incredible how large pine trees can get in a nice, comfortable environment. Urban environments can be so harsh, so difficult for trees to grow in. Got another big one over there. So letting them really reach their full potential in a native area like this is so cool to be able to see. And again, we talk about right tree, right place. That even applies to the condition of the tree. So in urban environments, we always have to talk about risk. Our board member, Shem Kendrick, did a wonderful video last week on how to assess a tree and how much risk you're comfortable with. One of the main points of that is if there's no target, then there's no risk. So as we get further into the forest where there's no trails, no roads, there's no risk there. So we can let trees get damaged, die naturally, decompose, and become a part of this ecosystem. It's so important. You can see this one here, seems like had a lot of interior decay. And that's all right. That's a part of life. So it happens to trees. They decay and they die eventually. And this is a wonderful space to be able to let trees do that in a safe way where it's not going to harm humans or property. And I think that was the last main point I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed this small walk through Whitemarsh Preserve. And if you really liked it, maybe let us know and we could do a live stream tree walk through here and spend a little bit more time if you really enjoyed it. So thank you all for watching and stay tuned for more videos. Take care.